joint. This is another joint presentation from EMCC and GCC, and today we're going to be covering how to get noticed on your next IT application. So we have Jake Nill here today, and he's going to tell you a little bit about himself, and then he's going to talk to you about different things about like how to set up your resume, how to boost your LinkedIn account, and how to catch recruiters' attention. And he has got some experience in this area, and he'll probably tell you a little bit about his experience. And so I'm going to hand it over to him. Okay, it's all yours.
Yeah, 1 second, just some housekeeping rules. This presentation is for you all. So if you have any questions, there is a chat feature that is available on Zoom. So you are more than welcome to utilize the chat feature to ask your questions. Myself and Landis, we will be monitoring the chat to see how we can get your questions answered. And in addition, the presentation will be recorded. So just FYI, if you don't want to be on the recording, feel free to turn your camera off. But we will also be taking questions at the end. If you are here for class and for extra credit in your class, at the end of the presentation, we will be providing an assessment that you can complete, and you can give us some feedback as well as provide information on the campus you're attending, and your instructor's name if you are receiving extra credit for participating tonight. So sorry about that. You can go ahead and get started now.
No worries. Thanks, Izelle. Thanks, Landis. And thank you all again for joining the call. Tonight, I'm going to go over, how you're going to get your next IT application noticed. And like Landis mentioned, it's going to go over resume, LinkedIn presence, and then we're going to open it up to Q&A at the very end as well. If you guys have questions, please let me know. And I'll just kind of get into this first slide. I've been in the industry for about 5 years in the IT services and staffing industry. I started out as a recruiter, supporting the Bay Area within the DevOps skill set. So I worked with hundreds of IT professionals on a daily basis as a career consultant, as someone that was an advocate for these folks, and I'd help get them jobs. And I'd help review their resumes. I'd give them feedback on LinkedIn. So that's just a little bit of background of my recruiting expertise. So now I'm an account manager. I moved into a new role. And so I partner with healthcare companies within the Phoenix market. And so my company, TekSystems, I don't know if some of you folks have heard of us. We are the largest IT staffing and services company in the nation. We deploy 80,000 consultants a year. We partner with 6,000 clients as well over North America, Europe, and Asia. So again, a little bit of background about myself, my company, and kind of, why I'm qualified to even talk about this. So I want to go over the Phoenix market snapshot specifically around IT. So the Phoenix market as a whole, it's known as the financial sector market. So a lot of companies like Wells Fargo, American Express, Bank of America, Charles Schwab, the list goes on. A lot of those companies are headquartered within Phoenix. And so with that come their IT departments. So a lot of work that my company does is within the financial sector, which dominates the Phoenix market. But we also have subdivisions around technology companies like GoDaddy, LexisNexis, and then you have healthcare, which, I support Blue Cross Blue Shield, Honor Health, Banner, WebPT, Matrix Medical, and the list goes on and on. I can list these off all day. And then we have hospitality industries. We have travel as well. So, this is a booming IT market. It was before COVID, but now that, the remote workforce is only growing from here, companies are moving out here. Like Intel just invested $20 billion into their facilities out of Chandler. Google's looking to build a data center out here as well. Microsoft already has the data center, same with Apple. So there's a lot of opportunity within the Phoenix market. So how are companies looking at resumes? Honestly, a lot of it is through job sites, Career Builder, Indeed, ZipRecruiter, LinkedIn, where you post your resume online, it's most likely going to be on those 4 sites. And with vendor management systems as well, companies lean on those systems to filter through candidates that apply for the position, and then recruiters get them in front of the hiring manager as well. So the big conduit to getting in front of hiring managers these days, and has been recruiters. And so, a lot of people can shy away from recruiters, some embrace them. I really just want to highlight the importance of partnering with a recruiter. And there's good ones and there's bad ones, but I always like to kind of draw a similarity to recruiters are like real estate agents. When you are on the market trying to buy a house, not a lot of people go out on their own and try to buy a house. They partner with a real estate agent because the real estate agent has resources like the MLS, which has thousands of homes that they can look at. They have clients that they work with, and just numerous other resources as well that they can tap into. The same thing goes for recruiters. They have direct contact with managers. They have access to hundreds, if not thousands of positions, if not locally, nationwide. So the recruiter that you're working with, at least from my company, I can't speak for all, but most likely they want to build rapport with you. They want to know, what makes you sleep at night, why you're looking for a position, your skills, your goals, your interests, so they can best match an opportunity for you and then bring in, 5, maybe 10, depending on what the market is yielding at that time. But they are your advocate. They have direct or indirect access to hiring managers, that, again, they are in your corner. They are presenting your information over to a hiring manager. So it's kind of like giving a presentation, like a lawyer would in court on like a case. So they are your advocates. I always recommend, no bias, putting bias aside, work with a recruiter. It will benefit you in the long run. So this portion, I want to go over resume structure. So I want to go over some of the resume do's, and then on the back half of this, the resume don'ts. So, and I'll highlight some examples in the example resume down at the bottom. So impact statements. You guys have probably heard them before through previous courses, through previous experience, but basically it is a problem or a situation that you encountered in your position, in addition to an action that you did, and equaling a result. And again, I'll highlight an example at the bottom here, but you want to beef out your resume with these impact statements because that's what's going to carry the most weight. Skip a little ahead here. Being clear and concise, very important. A lot of people ramble on their resumes, and hiring managers get inundated with hundreds of resumes when a position opens up. So being clear and concise in your resume is going to make it easier for the hiring manager to review your information, while keeping it short, but making a massive impact with your impact statements. Highlighting accomplishments obviously is very important. So something that you did in a project that made a massive impact, or just had a positive outcome, highlight it. Using data and numbers whenever possible. So in the IT industry, everyone is measured. There's always a quantified number associated with what you're doing. So if you know what your impact was to a project or to a certain process, and you're able to quantify that and put it into numbers, throw it in there, because that's going to carry a lot of weight as well. Most importantly, and I think one of the biggest things that you guys have to take from this presentation is just be honest with your experience. I can't tell you how many people I've worked with that, they were in an interview and a hiring manager is reviewing their resume and they pull something like a technology, let's say SQL, and they say that they're proficient in SQL. And the hiring manager starts asking the questions like, hey, how are you proficient? What have you done with it? And the truth is, it was just in the environment that they were working in. They weren't really hands-on with it. And so when a hiring manager grabs onto that, and they identified that, hey, this person's kind of, fluffing their experience, the interview just tends to crumble. So most importantly, just be honest with your experience. It carries you a long way. So I highlighted the first bullet point. This is a impact statement. This person automated deployments of Puppet with unit tests to safely and confidently introduce configuration management to developer teams. So we have a problem or a situation, what this person did, and the result of introducing configuration management to developer teams. And then at the very bottom, you see this person quantified what they were able to increase. So this is just a live example. This is a real resume. I just changed, obviously, the title of the company, left the name out, but this is real experience. And this person's resume stands out from the stack, from those that are probably a little too vague or a little too wordy. So keep this in mind, and we can obviously answer any questions on the back end if you have questions around this. So as important as resume do's, we have resume don'ts. So like I covered in the previous slide, don't be vague. I've seen so many resumes that have, someone's experience, they have the company title, they have the position, and then they have 50 bullet points of every technology out of a textbook. And it's not even what they're doing with the technology. It's just the technology. It's like, okay, you are telling me nothing about what you were doing. So if you can, don't be vague. But there is a balance to that, because you don't want to ramble and rant. You don't want to send paragraphs to a hiring manager on what you did, because again, they're getting inundated with tons of resumes and their time is very valuable. So, when they're reviewing a resume, they don't want to, look at a novel. They don't want to, feel like they're cracking open a book. You just want to be very clear and concise with your delivery and your experience. Same thing, don't use paragraphs. Ties into that, second bullet point. So yeah, we can again talk about that on the back end if you guys have questions. And this last bullet point ties in with being honest. Do not embellish. Just be true and honest with your experience. It's going to carry you a lot farther than, hey, it was in your environment, the tool, but you haven't been hands-on with it. That's where things start to go sour in an interview. And if you look on the right side of the screen, I highlighted obviously a paragraph. I'm sure it tells a good story, but no hiring manager is going to spend time looking at that. And then on the flip side, you have someone that has a very light, bullet points on their experience. They don't even break down, what kind of devices. They don't break down what kind of PCs, what servers, what printers. Yeah, they troubleshooted it, but what exactly does that mean? That's a very broad term. So I'm just trying to show you both sides of the coin here, because it's definitely a balance as you edit your resumes. Common misconceptions. Resumes can't be longer than one page. That is false. You can for sure have, a 2 to 3 page resume. I think where we get into deep water is where we have, a 14-page resume. And I've seen them. I don't read them. They tend to get passed on. So it's all about just keeping in mind being clear and concise, but also relevant with your experience. So, and that ties into the middle bullet, which is you need to show your entire work history, which is, again, false. You need to show what's relevant to the position you're applying for and your overall career. And then lastly, your resume is enough. You don't need a LinkedIn. That is so far from the truth. I'd say a LinkedIn is almost more important than a resume. Don't quote me there, it's not, but it's very important. And that is a great segue to go into LinkedIn presence. So again, I feel free to scan the QR code. It brings you to the LinkedIn sign up page. If all of you do not have a LinkedIn, please, 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 if there's one thing that I ask you to do after this presentation, if you do not have a LinkedIn, please fire one up tonight, at least get it started, because again, I'll get into it, but it is so important to your success, especially in the 21st century. So again, it's very critical. I'd call LinkedIn the resume of the 21st century. And 8 out of 10 times, recruiters tend to see your LinkedIn before your resume. So just keep that in mind. I always try to keep my LinkedIn updated, not that I'm looking, but it's something that it's putting your best foot forward. It's the first thing people see before your resume. So here's a snapshot of my LinkedIn. Yours is obviously going to look different because you're in the IT field, and if you're looking around, it's going to be structured a little bit differently. So you want it to reflect your resume. So when you have your experience listed off, like for example, TekSystems account manager, technology operations management, and then have 5 to 6 bullet points of what you were doing there. You want it to reflect your resume as much as possible. You can have little nuances that might not be the exact same, but for the most part, you want it to reflect. Profile picture. I've seen so many LinkedIns that don't have a profile picture, and already it goes in the back of the category. They can have, some amazing experience that I will still consider, but just not seeing someone's face, it just doesn't make it human. It just feels like I'm looking at a resume, and I'm trained to, interact with people and look at faces and also relate their experience to it. And so profile pictures are huge. It just helps beef up your LinkedIn presence. Get connected with people and companies on LinkedIn, people that are in your industry, maybe the industry that you're targeting, the skill sets that you're fostering, that you're learning, follow companies like AWS or Google, Red Hat, the providers that put out the technologies that you're going to be using in your environments, like follow them. You want to be up to date on the most recent trends, because we all know IT is so quick moving that you want to be in lockstep with these companies when a new update has come out, when a new changes happen. So get connected with the people that are leading the changes, but also the companies. And then be active. Get connected with your friends. When you see them get a promotion, comment on their posts and tell them, hey, congratulations, that's awesome. Just the more eyes that people see, when you're so active on LinkedIn, the more your name's going to get out, the more clicks on your profile you're going to get. Being active generates more activity to your page, therefore more opportunity pops up. So recruiters, tricks and tips. There's a few. I pulsed my team on, just some tips that I can give you guys as you are editing your resumes, your LinkedIns, or just interviews as well. And we can obviously cover that on the back end. But for LinkedIn's, your recommendations on there carry a lot of weight. So if you have a current manager or a former manager that you're really tight with, that are a big advocate for you, that you have a great relationship, don't be afraid to ask them, hey, can you write a recommendation for me on LinkedIn? Telling everyone how well of a job I did at that role. That's one of the first things I see when I go to a LinkedIn profile is I'll scroll down all the way to the bottom and I'll look at recommendations, because that just further validates that this person is legit and they've done a good job at this position. And that just confirms, like, hey, if they did well in this position, the position that I'm going to get them in the mix for, they'll probably do a great job. So always, always, always ask for recommendations when you have great relationships with your leaders. Again, avoid embellishing your experience. Big takeaway for this presentation is making sure embellishments are minimized, if not eradicated completely. Just be honest with what you've done, and everything else will fall into place. Okay, short-term employment, sometimes people fall into it, it's fine. And if you have a few short-term gigs for whatever reason, if you're put into a certain situation, that's okay. But when recruiters and hiring managers start to see a string of positions that are less than 6 months, it just shows that this person cannot hold down a job. And, that's obviously a red flag. That could be, is it a personality clash? Is their experience embellished and, we just didn't vet it properly? Are they just not technically strong? So focus on, maintaining long-term roles if you can, at least to the 6-month mark. If not a year or longer, because it tends to be a red flag for recruiters and hiring managers when it's less than 6 months. Refine your LinkedIn. Obviously, I just went over it. Again, it carries so much weight, almost more than the resume. It's the first thing that recruiters and hiring managers see before a resume. This is for developers. So if you have a GitHub or projects that you've worked on, showcase that. Put that in your resume, link it to your resume, link it to your LinkedIn. Hiring managers want to see that. Recruiters want to see that because that just shows, the proof is in the pudding, like what you did on a project or, what you have in your GitHub. Like that is tangible stuff that hiring managers can see and recruiters as well. Also putting side projects on LinkedIn and resume, again, important. Because if someone doesn't have a ton of experience in an enterprise level environment, but they've done a ton of side projects in tandem with getting their degree, that carries some weight as well. So keep that in mind. And we're kind of at the end of my presentation here. So please, if you're interested, let's get connected on LinkedIn. I am an account manager, again, for the healthcare industry, but I'm connected with my peers who are in the financial sector, the technology sector. I am tied in with a recruiting workforce based out in Tempe of over 100 recruiters that specialize within a skill set that, hey, if you're looking for a recruiter, I know quite a few good ones that I can get you linked up with. So if you are interested in learning more about the market, and getting a high level overview of what's going on right now, scan the QR code, get connected with me on LinkedIn. And I'm sure Landis and Izell will share my email as well if you guys miss this QR code. And then Q&A. I know this was a pretty quick presentation, but I think dialogue's pretty important here. So if anything stuck out to you guys that you wanted a little bit more clarity on, please fire up the questions. I'd love to answer them.
Yeah, so as a reminder, you can use the chat feature to type in your questions if you feel comfortable doing that, or you're more than welcome to raise your hand or unmute yourself and ask your question. I'll go ahead and get started because I have a few questions for you, Jake. So one of the things that you had discussed was recommendations on LinkedIn, and I know you had talked about previous managers, but I know many of our guests may be students. And so I was going to ask your thoughts on maybe asking their faculty for recommendations to have on a LinkedIn. I was just curious if the weight of a faculty is just as valuable as a weight of, a current or a previous manager.
Great question. Yeah. I mean, to answer your question, 100%, it's someone that this person is reporting to, whether that's in a, work environment or in a classroom setting, that's still going to carry some weight because, that professor or leader is dictating, how they're doing within that position. So yes, if you have recommendations from your professors, I know a lot of you, again, very early on in your careers, professor recommendations do carry a lot of weight.
Another question that I have, go ahead, Landis. I think you unmuted. Go for it.
Yes, thank you. A question that I had, Jake, is what is GitHub? So maybe that's something that's familiar to everybody in the IT world, but I wasn't familiar with that. So I was hoping you could explain a little bit more.
Yeah, so I only know it at a very high level because it is not in my skill set, but it is basically it is a library and a code repo for people to submit their work, their projects in the development space, that if someone were to click on their GitHub link, it's kind of like a code LinkedIn. It's specialized for people's work within the software development space. So I'm not going to dig in any bit deeper there because I don't have a deep understanding of it, but at a high level, that's what it is.
Another question that I have for maybe our students that are participating, many of our students may not have a lot of experience in the IT field, so some of them may struggle with putting together a resume, maybe for like an entry-level IT position. And so in those cases, what kind of things would you recommend for them so that way they can showcase their maybe experience that they've learned in a classroom? I know many of our classrooms also include hands-on experience for students to participate in labs. So just wondering from a recruiter's perspective, how do you recommend students position themselves or articulate that on a resume? Are there specific sections that they can maybe include that would be beneficial for students kind of as they are like entry level and emerging into the profession with not much IT experience yet?
So sorry, I shook the table. So hands-on experience is going to trump any certification. Sorry, my dog is whimpering in the background. Any certification, any classroom setting. Like if you have a lab, if you have lab experience, if you have hands-on project work, like what I was talking about a little bit earlier, that is always going to beat out knowledge around a certification, because you can be textbook smart. You can be, you can know all the information from a textbook, but applying it in an environment, being hands-on with it, it is going to be more valuable. So if you have a lab setting that you've worked with these tools and technologies, put that in the resume, or on your LinkedIn as well. But I don't want you to shy away from certifications, because they do help. They do help with overall knowledge. They do help guide people along a path of knowledge around the skill set that they are trying to get more specialized in. But I think it goes hand in hand. It's seeking out certifications, but more importantly, try to get in that lab setting, try to get tied in with projects, and get that hands-on experience. I hope that answers your question.
Yes. And so I was just, I was wondering, do you, as far as titles are concerned, do you typically see that title as like a lab experience section, or like them maybe elaborating on their education? I'm just kind of curious, what's the most common ways that you might have seen it formatted on a resume?
I typically see it in the education section. So, they'll break down classes, and if they've been in a lab setting, they will have a bullet point or two about their lab setting and what they were doing in that class. I've also seen folks that just got out of school that have done projects, have a specific project section that they break down as well, that break down hands-on experience. And it just showcases that a little bit more in depth. Good questions, though.
Jake, at the Maricopas, we're working hard to talk to our students about work-based experiences like internships, or even doing career interviews just to get their foot in the door and do some networking. Do you see a lot of value in those types of experiences?
Yeah, I mean, if you can get plugged in with an internship with a certain company, more likely than not, they have an opening for a full-time position after your internship. So if you can get your hands on an internship, by all means, go ahead. And, typically that's either found through the college that they're attending, or a third-party program as well. My company, we don't support a lot of internship programs, not because we don't want to, but we just, we're not needed in that situation. And sorry, Landis, what was the second part of the question?
Sometimes we find that students don't have enough time for internships because they're trying to balance that school work life.
Mhm.
And so we've been doing career interviews with them. And so we've been getting them in front of professionals in the industry that they want to go into so they can start building that network of people that they know in that
Mhm.
industry. And so I just wanted you to touch base on the importance of networking in the industry
Oh
that
yeah.
you go into.
Yeah, 100%. One thing that I recommend everyone does on this call is seek out user groups. So they're found on LinkedIn. You can look up, Phoenix user group of software development or, desktop support. And there are user groups that people can get connected with that basically it's just a big session that, different walks of life, show up, or maybe it might be on Zoom and they talk about their industry. They talk about what's going on. They talk about trends. They talk about challenges in the workplace. But that is a great way to get well connected with folks within that skill set and in that industry.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So I'm just starting my schoolwork for cybersecurity,
Awesome.
and I just joined the cybersecurity club at the school and signed up for National Cyber League, which is
Mhm.
a bunch of labs and stuff that you can do teamwork and solo stuff with.
Yeah.
Would you add that to the resume as well?
100%. Absolutely. You want to add in anything that you are, I guess, making more extracurricular on top of your schoolwork, because that's only going to show recruiters and hiring managers that you care and that you are going all in on this skill set and that you are passionate. So add that in. Anything that you're doing outside of your schoolwork, put it in. It's only going to benefit you.
Okay, we had a question coming in through the chat. So hello and thank you all for holding this event. I have gone back to college after working within the IT industry for several years. I was wondering, when time elapsed, does a past position held at a company become irrelevant for mentioning on a resume? Additionally, is there a different rule of thumb for LinkedIn profile in regards to the same question?
I would say it's all about relevancy. If the position is relevant to what you're seeking in your next role, leave it on there. But if you are like, if it was 10, 15 years ago, and again, this is just an example, that you held this position and then you went back to school and you're looking to get into a totally different skill set, it's not going to carry a lot of weight. And it's gonna it's not really going to matter that much to anyone that is viewing that information in a hiring manager role or recruiter. Because I would say, give or take 3 or 4 years is when relevancy starts to fade out a little bit, because technology, tools, processes are always flipping so quickly. So again, the position, if it's relevant to what you're looking to get back into, keep it on. If not, you have some flexibility on taking it off, and that goes for the same thing on LinkedIn.
Okay, I have another question in the chat. Speaking of students, a lot of us coming from non-IT backgrounds lack context and hands-on for a lot of the things we are learning. Most of it has been remote. A lot of the times we don't know what questions to ask. Has the industry adjusted to this new reality, or is the focus still on what everyone expects labs to look like before COVID?
That's a good question. I wouldn't say the expectations have changed, because whether you're in a physical lab within your school or if it's done remotely, if you are doing a lab with software that allows you to still do the same process remotely, that expectation just doesn't change. I leave it at that. Let me know if I didn't answer your question there.
I forget when I muted or unmuted. Okay, so I think I caught the questions. Okay. Any other questions for the audience? If not, I'm going to ask another question. I know we didn't really have the time or the opportunity to touch base on interviewing And so
Mhm.
I'm kind of curious, as a recruiter, how common do you find um, that a lot of recruiters are using what do they call it, like phone interviews first before invited in for an interview? And what are maybe some tips that you can provide to students when it comes to interviewing with a recruiter?
Yeah, good question. So I would say anything on your resume is fair game. So make sure that you have everything on your resume, audible ready to go, that you're ready to elaborate on. Um, again, on the phone, just being able to deliver your impact statements, and it kind of ties into your resume as well, in your LinkedIn presence, like delivering impact statements clearly and concisely, where people start to get lost, and then as a result lose a recruiter or the hiring manager in an interview, is they might get a little nervous about their experience and might get too excited, and they just filibuster about their experience or their previous role. For example, I just had someone do an interview that the hiring manager asked him one question, excuse me, and I think it was just like, hey, tell me why you're passionate about the space, and that was the only question he asked, and then the guy went on for 15 minutes. And the hiring manager just kind of sat there, and it ate into the interview time. And so just always keep in mind that there needs to be a balance between keeping things too short and then obviously rambling and ranting about your experience. One trick that I always recommend to people when they are answering a question that they might have a tendency to ramble on, but they're trying to fix that, is giving their answer, trying to keep it short, but following up with their answer. It's like, hey, did I answer your question? Did I elaborate? Would you like me to elaborate more? And that leaves a back door open for the hiring manager to be like, well, you kind of touched on this. Can you break that down a little bit more? But it just shows that you are conscious about how you're answering. So I would keep that in mind during phone, video, or on-site interviews.
I have one more question. How would you talk to someone who, like, I have a anxiety when I'm talking to people I really don't know, especially in
Yeah.
a face-to-face or even on the phone. How would you
both.
recommend someone like that gets kind of anxious and kind of quiets down during the interview process? Because that could turn a hiring manager completely off of the applicant.
Yeah, and I think there's just repetition. That's where mock interviews come into play. That you are working with your recruiter through mock interviews. So at this point, I would encourage you to be working with a recruiter that you trust, that you got comfortable with, that you're able to kind of break through that barrier of being less nervous around, so you can work hand in hand with that person. They become more of a career consultant friend than a stranger, and you feel comfortable doing mock interviews with them, and it's just repetition, and that repetition is just going to break down that anxiety, because I have worked with people like that in the past, and it takes some time, some investment, but it's something that you can break through, and that builds with repetition, and that builds with your confidence as well.
Yeah, great feedback. I would also suggest just practicing as much as you can. I too have worked with students who very much struggled, and we've done multiple mock interviews, and it was always great to see, the progress from the very first time we did a mock interview to that last time that we did some practice. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and drop in the link to GCZ's webpage in regards to interviewing. Our campus acquired Big Interview and interview software, and obviously we serve our students, but we also serve the community as well. So if you are interested in getting some resources to help you with interviewing, I encourage you to check out our website. and look at the information on that page in regards to Big Interview. It gives you the website and our organization code where you can go in there and go through interviewing modules, as well as do actual practice where you can view, record, and get immediate feedback via AI. So if interviewing is one of those things that you struggle with, feel free to check out our GCC website that I dropped in the chat to get more information on our Big Interview software that we have. See the benefits of coming to these presentations late in the evening.
I know.
Right? You get all these tidbits and then additional resources that will hopefully help you. So we're at 6:43. Or do we have any more questions from our audience?
I had one more additional question.
Yeah.
So 3 to 4 years is where relevancy drops for tech skills. How about softer management skills if you've held a managerial position in the past?
That's a good question. I think, in time, any skills that haven't been tapped into for a while tend to lose their sharpness. So, if you've been in a managerial position, for sure highlight that and let the hiring manager know that you have done that before. If you're looking to get back into a managerial position after 3 or 4 years, and it's at a larger scale, it's with a different skill set, larger team, that might be harder to get into, where you might want to take the lead path into that role. And you're kind of the liaison between individual contributors. Sorry, my dog is hungry. Willow, sorry. So taking the lead role, and you're that liaison between the manager and your peers, to where you can kind of take a stepping stone path to that managerial position. But if you've done it before, it typically shows a hiring manager that it's in your capacity to do it. It might take some time to get back and do it, but you can for sure do it again. Sorry if that was drawn out a little bit.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Any more questions for our presenter while he's here?
And I just want to add in, if some questions pop up on the back end, if you wake up with some questions tomorrow, I will switch back to the other page with the there we go, the QR code. Please connect with me, message me. I'm happy to answer questions, and I'm happy to get you connected with people that might have better answers for you that's specific to a skill set or an industry as well. So again, connect with me and I'm happy to answer questions for you over LinkedIn, email, call, text. I'm pretty available.
Awesome. And it is 6:45. So Jake, we thank you so much for your time this evening, and to all of our attendees. Thank you so much for dedicating time out of your busy schedule as well to be joining us in the evening to learn more. So if you are here for extra credit, I did drop in the link for you to complete. So I will stay on here for a few minutes so that way you have time to copy paste it. Feel free to, even if you're not here for extra credit, we encourage you to click on it and give us some feedback. We're always finding ways that we can improve the programming that we do. So be sure to click on it, and it will ask if you are here for extra credit, if you are a student, which campus and who the instructor is. So make sure you have your instructor's name so we can then follow up and let them know that you attended this evening. Yes, Corey, it will be made available to participants. If you are interested, I will drop my email in the chat as well. So that way, if you would like a link to the recording, feel free to shoot me over an email and I can send you the link once it becomes available. It should be available hopefully by tomorrow. It uploads from Zoom. I always forget how long it takes to do that. But just shoot me, I'll type it in here actually. My email's there, so feel free to shoot me over an email and we can go ahead and send you the link to the recording. Otherwise, thank you so much, everybody, for attending today. And like I said, dedicating time out of your busy schedule to develop yourself, hopefully personally and professionally. And Jake, thanks so much for your time and also making yourself available to our participants.
Of course, I'm happy to help. Thank you for having me. Again, please connect with me. I'm happy to help.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, y'all. Take care.